Here's what Hebrews 8:13 says. When he said a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. But whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. What's going on here? All right, so if we're going to look at this text in Hebrews, we need to first understand what a covenant really is. I don't think people understand that a covenant has many parts, but the two parts that we're going to look at today is the kind of the written contract section, but then also what happens between the two parties. So I'm married to Amy, and we were married once upon a time, 1992. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And when we came together to say, I do, we made a covenant. And we had a contract, so to speak. These would be the wedding vows. And so the minister read those vows to us. Now, that would be the covenant. That would be the thing that you both sign and then you put it on a wall, maybe in a frame or something like that. It's what we committed to. In other words, that's the contract part of the covenant. Now, a lot of times we just call that the covenant, right? So that's the vows. But then Amy and I both say, I do. We both commit to that contract, and we are making a covenant together, right? So what you can see here is that there's the vows, but then there's the two parties coming together, agreeing to these vows and saying, I do, and then this is the covenant. So let's just say that one of us cheats. That covenant is broken if one of us cheats. That doesn't mean that the covenant of the wedding vows is bad. It just means that this has been marred in some way. So keep that in mind when we look at what is going to go obsolete. So what happened at Sinai was that Yahweh brought a people that he wanted to be in relationship with out of Egypt. He brought them to Sinai. He cut covenant with them and said, here's the terms of my covenant. And then they went and did this golden calf thing. And so when they did that, they essentially cheated on God. And so God got really mad. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on that, but here's what we know, is that they had a heart of stone, and they were unable to fulfill the requirements of their covenant with God. Now, just because they made the golden calf, does that mean that the terms of the covenant was bad? It wasn't bad or wrong, and they were not to go obsolete. Now, the old covenant, or the Sinaitic covenant, was inferior in the sense that it didn't take that heart of stone and make it a heart of flesh. It just gave them obediences. It gave them the terms of the contract, so to speak. And so Yahweh was seeking in the new covenant to give them a heart of flesh, one that would then want to obey because they wanted to, it was in them to. I found that a lot of people somehow equate the New Testament to the New Covenant. And that's not exactly right. If you're going to go look up a classic New Covenant text, you would go to Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through around 34. You might go to Ezekiel 36, verse 26, where he takes their heart of stone and gives them a heart of flesh. So let's just say, go back to me and Amy for a second. Me and Amy, if we made that first covenant, and let's just say I'm the one that messed up, my heart was a heart of stone, and then I cheated on her. But then she forgave me, and then my heart was turned tender toward her, and then we came back and we renewed our vows. There really would be no need to have new vows, but it would be a new covenant, a renewed covenant, because we came back together and we rejoined. So that's essentially what's happening with the new covenant. But with the new covenant, what happened was, because of Jesus, he dies on the cross, raises from the dead, and then gives us the Spirit. And that Spirit is being written on our hearts. And because of now Yeshua living in us, we don't live by the letter of the law, but instead what happens is we have been given the Spirit by which we want to obey. And so now we don't do letter of the law, we still do law, we still follow our Father's instruction, which is what the Torah is. And so we still seek to do the 10 Commandments and to do all the other stuff, minus what was required at the tabernacle or temple. I've explained that in past videos. But the bottom line is that it's still the same set of vows. So what was the purpose of the Sinaitic covenant? It was a training ground. It was a pedagogue, a custodian, something that kept them, kept the people moving toward a relationship with Yeshua until Yeshua actually came. Now, notice I said until Yeshua actually came. It doesn't mean that now that Yeshua came that the custodian still stops. It's still a tutor. It still teaches us. It still draws us to Jesus. But the thing is that now that the Spirit's in my heart, I now follow because I want to. It's like you can't stop me from doing it. I'm just going to do it. So that is the context of this verse. I'll read it again. And he said, a new covenant. He has made the first obsolete. What's going obsolete? Not the vows. What's going obsolete is the hurt and the pain of a people that fell away, that couldn't follow God. And to show you what that looks like, I'm going to flip back over to Hebrews 8, verse 8. And here's what it says. For finding fault with them. I should probably go to verse 7. For if the first covenant had been faultless, which we're not talking about the contract here, we're talking about the people, there would have been no occasion sought for a second. So a second covenant, a renewed covenant, for finding fault with who? For finding fault with them, Israel, us. So then notice that the Hebrew writer then goes into now quoting Jeremiah chapter 31, and it says that in verse 10, right in the middle, I will put my laws into their minds, I will write them on their hearts, and I'll be their God, and they shall be my people. This is a hard concept, I think, for evangelicals. It's that the new covenant is actually not finished playing out. So I know that I continue to sin, but the thing is, my heart condition positionally is all the way right before God. The light switch in my heart is turned on, where I am able to now be enslaved to righteousness. I've divorced that first husband, go back to last week. I've divorced that first husband, and now that's dead. That first husband's dead. Sin is dead in me, and now I am free unto righteousness. Now, I'm going through a sanctification process, and so now, when Yeshua returns, it's going to be complete. But right now, the work that he started in me, at my giving my heart to Jesus, he's going to finish that good work. I continue on toward that, and then someday it's going to like fix all the way, and then no one's even going to have to tell their neighbor how to follow God because they'll just do it intuitively. But there's no discrepancy between following Yahweh intuitively and what's actually in the written text of the Father. Now, I want you to know something, that the wedding vows. The wedding vows both teach us how to live, but also invite people into a narrative. Worship is doing God's story. And so when we go through those feast days, what we are pressing into is different aspects of Jesus's kingdom and ministry. And so we do that intuitively. We do it because it's a custodian. It still teaches us. And then there you go. Now I'm going back to chapter 8, verse 13. But whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. What is that? It's not the vows. It'd be like if I just married Amy somewhere later down the road, I cheated on her and broke that covenant. And then we renewed our vows, same vows, but we renewed them. And then eventually at some point, what will grow old and will disappear is the memory, the pain associated with me cheating or breaking that covenant. The fault, for finding fault with them, remember in chapter 8, verse 8, the finding fault thing, even though I'm completely forgiven, it's like it's still there. It's weird. I think people somehow think that, God forgives and separates sin as far as the east is from the west, that somehow God had forgotten, like, whoo, it's just gone. God's not stupid, and we even remember. But that at some point is going to fully disappear. And that's something that's going to happen in the future. The memory, in a sense, will be erased. That first covenant of the golden calf in our lives will be totally gone, and now we'll have a new heart and totally walk with our Messiah. That's enough for this week. I'll see you next week.